Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. In last week's video, I was talking about Cardenio. I'm going to link it in a card above. In that video, I talked about how I wanted to make a video on All is True or Henry VIII, a play that, like Cardenio, is attributed to John Fletcher and William Shakespeare. And so that is what today's video is all about. We date the creation of this play to 1612, and at first we think it is most commonly known as All is True. However, on or before the publication of the first folio of 1623, it starts to be known as Henry VIII. As I mentioned at the start of this video, it's a co-authored text, written by John Fletcher and William Shakespeare, and this puts it in the company of a couple of other plays, namely Two Noble Kinsmen of 1613 and also the topic of last week's video, Cardenio, we believe. If we look for the potential sources that Fletcher and Shakespeare might have consulted in order to put together this history play, we come up with a number of suggestions. Included in the list of possible text is Holinshed's Chronicles. Also suggested is Foxe's Book of Martyrs, first published in English in 1563. I've got a video on the Book of Martyrs which I'm going to link in a card now. For me, it's a bit of a shame that Henry VIII, or All is True, is quite rarely performed today. Perhaps that's because it's sort of an odd duck in terms of history plays. And part of that is the plot or narrative line. And because it's so rarely performed, I think it's fitting for me to lay out that plot for you now. Once I've done so, I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with me that the plot is the most fascinating thing about this play. What Fletcher and Shakespeare have produced here makes Showtime's The Tudors look like a BBC4 documentary in terms of historical accuracy. So, with that being said, let's look at the plot of Fletcher and Shakespeare's Henry VIII, a play that at first was comically known as All is True. When we first meet the court, they have just returned from the Field of Cloth of Gold in France, which occurred in June 1520. We are shown the Duke of Buckingham's hatred of Wolsey because of his base birth and his influence over the king. Next, we see Buckingham being arrested for treason, which occurred in April 1521. Queen Catherine enters the scene and pleads on behalf of the English wool traders to see the weight of taxation they endured lessen. She also speaks on Buckingham's behalf. The king is unmoved and Buckingham's crimes are presented. He is called to trial. The audience hears that many of the court are infected with French fashions and customs. A masque is held at Cardinal Wolsey's house, York Place. Henry is shown meeting Anne for the first time. Wolsey, at this point, describes her as Viscount Rochford's daughter. However, this was Thomas Boleyn's title from the 18th of June 1525. So there's been quite an elapse of time. Nevertheless, at this masque at Cardinal Wolsey's house, Henry is shown to be immediately besotted by Anne Boleyn. Act 2 begins with the Duke of Buckingham being found guilty of treason and being taken to his execution, which happened on the 17th of May 1521. So we have jumped from 1525, the earliest date that Thomas Boleyn could have been known as Viscount Rochford, back to 1521. Those who discuss the Duke of Buckingham's fall blame Wolsey. Gossip is beginning to swirl about the king seeking to separate from the queen and having begun to doubt the legality of their marriage. Again, Wolsey is implicated in the king's doubt. News is given that Cardinal Campius, presumably referring to Cardinal Campeggio, has arrived in England because of these doubts of the king's. Cardinal Campeggio actually arrived on the 8th of October 1528. Norfolk and Suffolk voiced their hatred of Wolsey and their desire to free the king from his influence. Anne is apparently completely unaware of Henry's intentions towards her and voices her sympathy for Catherine. She asserts that she would have no wish to ever be a queen. She, however, learns that Henry has elevated her to the Marchioness of Pembroke, which occurred in 1532. We jump back in time, however, because then we see the trial of the marriage between Catherine and Henry beginning at Blackfriars, which happened in June 1529. Catherine defends the legitimacy of her marriage. In the play, her speech is given as follows. Unlike so many of the history plays, in regard to this speech, we actually have the document that purports to be the words that Catherine did speak at the trial in Blackfriars. Of course, it's possible that this is an elaboration or even a fabrication, but this is what the historical record says that Catherine said. Clearly, Fletcher and Shakespeare have made a few changes to the speech that Catherine is reported to have given at the trial in Blackfriars. They leave out the mention of her professed virginity, for example. And perhaps that is because it makes her argument stronger. Perhaps it's simply too visceral. The discussion of Queen's virginity or otherwise is perhaps not meet for a public stage. But I do think it follows a fairly similar line of discussion. And that's interesting. In this, at least, there seems to be among these two men a desire to be, in part at least, historically accurate. I also wonder why they have made the changes they have made to this speech and also to the story of Henry VIII as a whole. In 1612, the year that this play was produced, I think it's important to remember that Elizabeth, the daughter of Henry VIII, has been dead for nearly 10 years. Her cousin and successor is James of Scotland. So why, as we look through this play, is there the degree of sensitivity about the life and behaviour of Henry VIII being taken? Well, he is a relative of James. He is also a regnant king. Is this what makes Shakespeare and Fletcher so careful about the story that they tell? Well, I'm happy for you to decide what you think and to let me know. But to do so, we need to talk about the rest of the plot, to see how Fletcher and Shakespeare have laid out the rest of the narrative that they have chosen to tell. At the end of Act 2, immediately after Catherine's defence of her marriage at Blackfriars, she accuses Wolsey of turning Henry against her. And before leaving the trial, she asserts that she wants it to be moved to Rome, as Catherine did in reality. Wolsey pleads his innocence and ignorance. Henry supports Wolsey's claims, stating that his conscience was first pricked by the French ambassador during his discussions about the marriage of the Princess Mary to the Dauphin. We also see Henry's mind lighting on Thomas Cranmer as the new man for high office. In Act 3, we are shown Wolsey and the character Campius, read Campeggio, meeting with Queen Catherine to advise her to submit to her husband the king in order to enjoy his mercy. We learn that Henry marries Anne in secret. Now, I can't tell you the exact date of their marriage because, as with many secret things, it is unknown to us. But the best guess is that it probably happened sometime in 1532. Next up in the play, we are shown that Wolsey has sent a packet of documents to the king. He includes, by mistake, something that displays just how greedy he has been. This disclosure, and not his failure to secure the king's divorce, is given as the reason that Wolsey falls from favour. In reality, he falls from favour in 1529, which is a good couple of years before Henry and Anne would have had their secret wedding. We are shown Thomas Cranmer and Thomas More rising in their influence with the king. In Act 4, we see Anne Boleyn being crowned as queen. Those observing it discuss their complete joy. There is no question of how joyous an occasion this is for all who behold it. Her coronation in reality occurred on the 1st of June 1533. In the play, at this point, Anne is described in terms that are most commonly associated with the divine. Next, we are taken to see Catherine, now the Dowager Princess, who lies dying at Kimbolton. She actually dies on the 7th of January 1536. However, we are shown her in her illness learning of Wolsey's death, which had occurred on the 29th of November 1530. Wolsey's sins are recounted, but they are then followed up by a list of all his virtues. A messenger is sent by the king, we are told. There is absolutely no evidence of any communication going from Henry to Catherine after her banishment from court, but this messenger wishes Catherine well. She then sends her last letter to him. In the final act, Act 5, we begin with Anne being in labour. We are shown Gardiner's hatred of Cranmer, Cromwell and Anne. He voices a desire to see them all dead. Henry meets with Cranmer to warn him of the judicial plots against his life and Henry's own provisions for Cranmer's rescue. It is announced that Anne has safely delivered of a baby girl, Elizabeth, which occurred on the 7th of September 1533. Henry rewards the bearer of this news. There is no caveat or question. He is happy to have his new daughter. An attempt is made to arrest Cranmer in the play. This attempt didn't actually occur until 1543, at which point, rather than being newly delivered of Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn had been executed many years previously. During the attempt to arrest him, Cranmer shows the king's ring to his accusers and stops them from acting against him. The king enters, displeased, and forces a reconciliation between Cranmer and Gardiner. In the final scene, Elizabeth is christened, which occurred on the 10th of September 1533 in history. And all of the hopes for her future are proclaimed. Cranmer is given the following speech. "Let me speak, sir, for heaven now bids me, and the words I utter let none think flattery, for they'll find 'em truth. This royal infant, heaven still move about her, though in her cradle, yet now promises upon this land 1,000,000 blessings, which time shall bring to ripeness. She shall be, but few now living can behold that goodness, a pattern to all princes living with her, and all that shall succeed. Saba was never more covetous of wisdom and fair virtue than this pure soul shall be. All princely graces that mould up such a mighty peace as this is, with all the virtues that attend the good, shall still be doubled on her. Truth shall nurse her, holy and heavenly thoughts still counsel her. She shall be loved and feared. Her own shall bless her, her foes shake like a field of beaten corn, and hang their heads with sorrow. Good grows with her. In her days every man shall eat in safety under his own vine what he plants, and sing the merry songs of peace to all his neighbours. God shall be truly known, and those about her from her shall read the perfect ways of honour, and by those claim their greatness, not by blood. Nor shall this peace sleep with her, but as when the bird of wonder dies, the maiden phoenix, her ashes new create another air, as great in admiration as herself. So shall she leave her blessedness to one, when heaven shall call her from this cloud of darkness, who, from the sacred ashes of her honour, shall star-like rise, as great in fame as she was, and so stand fixed, peace, plenty, love, truth, terror, that were the servants to this chosen infant, shall then be his, and like a vine grow to him. Wherever the bright sun of heaven shall shine, his honour and the greatness of his name shall be, and make new nations. He shall flourish, and like a mountain cedar reach his branches to all the plains about him. Our children's children shall see this, and bless heaven." Henry responds simply, "Thou speakest wonders." Cranmer goes on, "She shall be, to the happiness of England, an aged princess. Many days shall see her, and yet no day without a deed to crown it. Would I had known no more, but she must die. She must. The saints must have her yet a virgin. A most unspotted lily shall she pass to the ground, and all the world shall mourn her." And so concludes Fletcher and Shakespeare's play Henry VIII, also known as All is True. That's correct. It ends with the christening of the young baby Princess Elizabeth. It's as if Fletcher and Shakespeare wish to turn their audience's heads away from the fact that Anne Boleyn, Elizabeth's mother, is simply the second of Henry's 6 queens and wives. That Elizabeth, this baby who is promised so much joy and a life of success and happiness, in the words of Cranmer, will have to come to terms with the fact that her own father has her mother executed before she herself has turned 3 years old. This queen, whose coronation we see being fated, her body and self described as semi-divine, will be arrested, tried, convicted and executed on what we believe are trumped-up charges of adultery, incest and treason. And so we have to wonder, this is not a play in which all is true. This is a play, I would argue, in which all is condensed, shortened, and much is left out. Walter Cohen explains these omissions and changes and alterations to the historical timeline in the following way. Catherine's defect is that she is not the queen who will bear Elizabeth. The individual tragedies are thus both personally and politically fortunate. Elizabeth's birth promises not only her reign, but also that of her successor, King James I, England's sovereign at the time of all is true. Before I close this video out, there is a moment or an event relating to a performance of this play that I would like to bring to your attention. Because if I were a more superstitious person than I actually am, I might see in this event evidence of communication from beyond the grave. That perhaps somebody whose story is being told in this play, or even whose story is being omitted, has returned seeking vengeance on the 29th of June 1613. Because on that day, a performance of Henry VIII, or All is True, was going on at the Globe Theatre in London. At some point during the play, cannons are fired. This is a fairly common stage technique and by no means is that unusual. Of course, the cannons are not being live fired, there won't be cannonballs in them, they will be being blank fired. But as with all blank firing of weapons, even today, you need to make sure that the barrel is clear. Any debris within it could strike somebody and cause them harm, or could be ignited by the gunpowder and potentially cause a fire. Certainly, that is what happens. The cannons are fired, something is within the barrel that catches the thatch of the globe. Within hours, the globe has burnt to the ground. I wonder, do you think that it's possible that some figure, Henry VIII, Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, or indeed any of his 4 other wives, might have been seeking their vengeance in this? Just how superstitious are you? Let me know in the comments section down below. Don't worry if you are not superstitious, because I would also like to know what you think of the way this play is shaped. Why does it end with the moment it does? And also, why do you think it's so rarely performed? Would you like to see a production of this play? Let me know that too in the comment section, or come and find me over on social media. I'll leave the links in the description box. Follow me there and we can continue the conversation. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please let me know by clicking the thumbs up. Please also subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon so that YouTube tells you when I've next uploaded. I hope you're going to have a great day whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye for now.